Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's Tim Richards, and today what I want to do is I want to take a look at Bayern Munich and how their season's going so far. From an outsider's perspective, it kind of looks like everything is totally normal and this is business as usual for Bayern. That couldn't be more wrong though. I think what we've seen from Bayern in the past, especially in the past few weeks or so, but since the season started, has been very much a steady decline. And I think what happened a couple of weeks ago against Holstein Kiel in the Cup, I think that probably wasn't at all unexpected for a lot of people. Bayern started their season off with a really resounding victory. It's 8-0 against Schalke, and this was really direct. It was great energy from Sane in his first official game for Bayern. Great from Gnabry. Kimmich was playing back in midfield again. It just looked like nothing had changed, and Bayern hadn't really relented from how they were like a couple of weeks prior in the Champions League tournament in Lisbon. Schalke had kind of been on this horrific downward cycle for quite a while, and so I think that if you score 8 goals against any opponent, especially keeping a clean sheet, which we will soon realise is quite a tall order for Bayern at the moment, but I think 8-0 against any team, very good start. It gets Bayern off on the right foot and should in theory set the tone for the rest of the year. What happened though was something slightly off script. Shortly after the Schalke game, Bayern travelled to Budapest where they played Sevilla in the Super Cup. This game went to extra time, so they played 120 minutes against a really energetic, really physical Sevilla team. They conceded a penalty within the first 10 minutes, I believe, and that is another thing that was really kind of setting the tone for the rest of the season. But regardless, they won. But of course, it went to extra time, and that had a huge knock on their game a few days later against Hoffenheim. The Hoffenheim of this season currently stand in 11th place and have really fallen off. They did really, really well at the start of the season. I think Andre Kramaric was putting in really great performances, was scoring a lot of goals. And then, of course, he got struck down by COVID and never really seemed to recover his form once he got back. So when you look at that, Bayern lose 4-1 against Hoffenheim, you can maybe make an excuse. Okay, they were all clearly very tired from Budapest. Several days, only 2 or 3 days before. So the following week from this Hoffenheim defeat, Bayern then hosted Hertha Berlin, and in that game they won 4-3. They had to wait right until the end to get that fourth goal. It was Lewandowski, he got all 4 goals, and it was a penalty after the 94th minute maybe. Okay, you get 3 points, you concede 3 goals. That is cause for concern. It was one of those games where I think after about 70 minutes you really did start to think this isn't going to be this is going to go right down to the wire, and it did. So Hertha Berlin actually equalised after 88 minutes, and so 5 minutes after that Lewandowski managed to get his 4th goal, a penalty. But this isn't at all surprising. As I've said before, this is very much par for the course for Bayern right now. And games like this have occurred really, really frequently. Bayern just letting opposition players just have a chance at goal. And that kind of got really bad later on in from around November to December, and also up till now. Bayern would typically start games really poorly, very lethargically, and for I think 8 or 9 games in a row they conceded first, and they conceded first very early. I'm completely fine with teams scoring against Bayern. It's happened a lot. I've been supporting this team for about 20 years now. I've seen teams score against Bayern, but just the sheer ease of which it's happening right now is a big problem that I think Hansi Flick does need to address. The reason why Bayern are still top of the table at the moment is because every time they've dropped points, one of their closest competitors has dropped points as well. So against Hoffenheim, they lost 4-1. Dortmund lost 2-0 to Augsburg. Bayern drew 1-1 against Werder Bremen. Leipzig drew 1-1 against Frankfurt. But even the Bundesliga's dark horse this season, Union Berlin, they were able to get a goal against us really quickly after about 4 minutes. And they were able to hold on. Okay, Bayern got a goal back, but they didn't lose. So, credit to Berlin there. But then you think, okay, Bayern have dropped points to this team, this lower to mid-table team. They're actually kind of upper mid at this point. I think a couple of weeks ago they were in a position where they could be qualifying for Europe, which is really fantastic to see. But you can see that Bayern concede early. They can only just about manage a draw. This is a time where Dortmund needed to capitalise, where Leverkusen needed to capitalise, where Leipzig needed to. Leipzig won 2-0 against Werder Bremen. Leverkusen beat Hoffenheim 4-1. Dortmund lost 5-1 to Stuttgart. That seems to be a recurring theme as well. Every single time Bayern drop points, you think, okay, now the opposition's really going to capitalise. That just doesn't happen. All of these prime opportunities for teams to knock Bayern off the top, and they just haven't taken them. However, that is something that Bayern are going to have to look out for coming in the next few weeks. So that's quite a rough overview of what happened in the Bundesliga. And to be honest, if you've seen one Bayern game this season, you've pretty much seen them all. There have been some really good moments, the way that they started the Bundesliga against Schalke, 8-0, fantastic, really great way to start. 4-0 against Atletico. Really, Bayern are capable of putting in really, really great performances at the moment. I think to suggest that they're not is maybe a bit disingenuous. But there is clearly a problem where Bayern are struggling to keep focused for 90 minutes. They can't keep up the energy. They especially can't keep it up right at the start of the game or immediately after half time. And I don't think this is a problem this is a hang up from time under Kovac. This is a problem that's been going on for years. Bayern have a tendency to get complacent and to really underestimate their opponents. A good example of this in recent memory is getting knocked out of the cup in the second round against Holstein Kiel. Regardless of what happens, people talk about it as if they're from the conference, and they're not. They're only in the division below. However, Bayern played Manuel Neuer, Niklas Süle, Lucas Hernandez, Alphonso Davies, Joshua Kimmich, Leroy Sané, Thomas Müller, Serge Gnabry. They played a lot of players that in theory are first team players. Certainly players that are within the first at least 12 or 13 names on a team sheet. The individual quality alone of that team should have done something about that they should have done something against Holstein Kiel. I think the fact that people will say, why wasn't Neuer making any of the saves in the penalty shootout? Why did it go to a penalty shootout in the first place? I think that is a game that should have been over not even within 90 minutes, within 70 minutes, Bayern should have scored at least 3 or 4 goals and say, yeah, we're the top of the Bundesliga, we're the top of Europe, Holstein Kiel are nothing to us. But at the same time, I think it's easy to be why weren't Bayern dominating? It's easy to do exactly what I just did. I think it is easy to be Bayern should have done better, this team's useless compared to Bayern. It's the division below, and Holstein Kiel are likely to be promoted this coming season. But in the second round of their cup. So where do we go from here? I don't know. From an outsider's perspective, the biggest issue is the backline. Benjamin Pavard isn't as good as he was last season. Last season, I didn't necessarily like him at right back, but that's mainly what I want in a right back. His numbers were consistent, he offered defensive stability. This season, not so much. He seems to be a bit of a liability on that side. He's not great at bringing the ball forward, he seems to be out of position quite a lot. Against Augsburg, he was taking up some really good positions in the box, which is great, but he is a right back, so kind of a little bit redundant in that sense. Bayern need to buy a right back. They can't buy a player who can fill in at right back, because they've already got at least 3 of them. The game against Mainz, Bayern won it 5-2. They lost the first half 2-0, really easily as well. It could have been 4-0 at one point to Mainz. They had a couple of really, really great chances in the second half. But the difference between how Bayern played with Joshua Kimmich at right back and how they played with Benjamin Pavard at right back in the same game against the same opponent, night and day, absolute staggering difference. I think having Joshua Kimmich at right back really frees up guys like Leroy Sané, Serge Gnabry, Kingsley Coman, whoever's in front of them. It's not it's probably not going to be Douglas Costa, let's be brutally honest here. But having that sort of attacking impetus really frees up somebody like Leroy Sané, because it means that there's another outlet for him. You can say, okay, we've got this guy running on an overlap, that can either be an option to make a pass so you can get an assist, or it takes defenders away from me and I've got more space to run. With Benjamin Pavard not really offering that sort of attacking mobility, it does kind of hinder what Leroy Sané can do and what Serge Gnabry can do. Now, is Benjamin Pavard going to be Bayern's right back next season? Probably. I think it's a safe assumption to make. Would I like to see somebody slightly more attack-minded? Yeah. And I realise that kind of makes no sense because there's a big problem in keeping a clean sheet. And my solution is get a right back that attacks more. That's kind of what I would do. The first step, address the right back situation. Hansi Flick's played Niklas Süle at right back a few times, and that's worked out quite nicely. It's not amazing. Niklas Süle is clearly struggling with fitness problems. He's come back from his quite long-term injury. It seems to have come back overweight. I'm not exactly in peak physical condition, so it seems maybe a little bit unfair for me to say like he's not fit enough. I am atrocious, quite frankly. Maybe that's an option because you're guaranteed defensive stability and a positional awareness that I think Benjamin Pavard sometimes lacks at times. Address the right back position, and maybe that's give Chris Richards more opportunities. He's got a fantastic name. Let's see what he can do at right back. Who knows? Next to that, you've got Jerome Boateng, who, I'm going to say it, has been one of Bayern's best defenders this season. Maybe that's because the expectations were like really, really low for him, but he's been fairly reliable. He had a bit of a wobble against Mainz, and so he came off at half time. But otherwise, having him in that team offers really great distribution, really great leadership, authority, and he can still make a good tackle, because there was a period like last season and the season before where he would go into a tackle and you don't really have any idea whether or not he's going to be able to stand afterwards. But he's doing really well. Seems to have properly adjusted his body to he's adjusted his play style to his body, and that seems to have worked out fantastically for him. So there's every possibility that he may even get an extension. I'm not going to be super annoyed if that happens. I'd like to see Bayern plan for the future, but as we're about to establish, that's not what we're doing at the moment. Next to Boateng, or whoever's in that right centre-back position, you've got David Alaba. David Alaba is guaranteed leaving. He's probably going to go to Real Madrid for free. Why Bayern are favouring him over somebody like Lucas Hernandez, who Bayern's biggest signing, 80 million, whatever, the price doesn't factor into it. This is a guy that Bayern were really excited to buy. They bought him ahead of the window opening. Bayern have banked on Lucas Hernandez and frankly have treated him quite poorly up until this point. He's been used as like rotation for the left back role, but with the left back role you've got Alphonso Davies, who last season showed that he's capable of becoming the best left back in the world. He's not in great form at the moment, but he will be. He's still really young. I would have that lineup: Alphonso Davies, Lucas Hernandez, Süle or Boateng, maybe Tonge Nyanzu once he's back, and then a right back. Whether that's Pavard or somebody else, that's not my decision to make, sadly. In front, Kimmich and Goretzka, I think that works. I think it works perfectly. It seems to lack the creativity that Thiago offered, but I think that's not really necessarily a big problem at the moment. Bayern are scoring goals, and creativity can come from guys like Kimmich. He's always a fantastic passer. Also, Thomas Müller sat right in front of him. I don't necessarily think it's a problem. What I do think is a problem is that these two are playing virtually every single game, like 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, every single week. Okay, maybe Corentin Tolisso is the guy that can take over one of those roles. Maybe he can take over the Goretzka role. They're virtually identical players at this point in terms of play style. Physically, maybe a little bit different. And I'd like to see more of Marc Roca. I think he can provide both creativity and defensive stability, but I think the Kimmich and Goretzka partnership is completely fine. I don't think there's any problem with that at all. The way that Bayern play at the moment seems to be they're very much caught between wanting to be really, really fancy and like being really shy with shooting. I want these players to be much more direct, but when you have guys like Leroy Sané, Kingsley Coman, Serge Gnabry, Lewandowski, Müller, you've got all of Costa, you've got all of these guys that can make moments from anything, but it just doesn't seem to happen. When they get into a good position, they usually opt for a pass to the side, or, okay, I'm like one-on-one with the keeper, let's go for another option. I really miss the days where Neuer would catch the ball from a corner and just throw it as far as he could to Robin, Ribéry, Alaba, whoever was running. I can't remember the last time Bayern have done that. I think that's the fundamental difference between how this team play and how the team from 2012-13 play. Both treble winning sides, very different though. I can remember when Bayern won the treble, I was speaking with some friends and we both realised this is going to be the opportunity that Bayern could have had a few years ago when they had all of that success, but they get to keep the manager now. There is going to be like a sense of continuity, and you think that's fantastic, but ultimately that's been Bayern's biggest downfall, is that they've tried to play with that same intensity, and they're kind of struggling at the moment, physically, mentally, and it's a big shame. There seems to be fixes, so I'm not going to say that Bayern are going to lose every single game, they're going to get relegated, but Lazio's coming up, and they need to address these problems very, very quickly. That's all from me today. If you like this video, leave a comment, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your sister. Don't tell your sister. If she likes Bayern, tell your sister, tell everybody. If they like football, if they like the Bundesliga, if they like football, tell them. I'm easy, I don't mind who my audience is. Follow me on Twitter, you can follow me on Instagram if you want. You can go to my website, iaftt.com, that's where I do writing about football in general. But yeah, that's pretty much everything, and I've never really done one of these sign-off pieces before, so I will see you later.